Hey everyone, thank you for joining the Warrior Podcast. This is Frank Lardito. I'm tinkering around with the audio, just trying to do some fun stuff here. So, got a good reception from my first podcast. We're just getting started here. I am going to be talking a lot about dark stuff, but today I want to talk about one of the fundamental foundations of living our best life. And when we live our best life, our brains get stronger. We can cope with things better. We become better problem solvers. We become better friends, better husbands, better wives, etc. I just received a call from one of my dear friends. I haven't seen him in probably 25 years. He now lives in Mexico, and he lives very humbly. He lives on the beach, basically. He teaches pickleball. He makes candles. He's got a real simple, laid-back life, and he couldn't be happier. He's out of the rat race. Through our conversation today, I told him that he was the master of gratitude. He has a tendency to look at everything in life with a grateful eye. And we all have the ability to do that. For instance, in my book, I talk about the two knowns. In my world, we only have two knowns. We have our past, and we have this present moment in time. Whether we go to a different place after we die, like a heaven, or we're reincarnated, I mean, all that stuff is possible, but it's not known. Those are our beliefs. But of the two knowns, we have our past and our present. We have the ability to choose to look at our past as a nightmare. And most people do this. They look at the bad things in their past, and they create a narrative in their mind about how terrible their past has been. I was abused, I had terrible parents, I had a rough life, and so forth. It's very easy for the human being to default to the negative because we learn faster from the negative. This is an evolutionary thing that is needed for our survival. For instance, we learned, like I did when I was a little boy, I stuck my finger in an electric socket and I got a pretty bad zap. And I learned right away from the negative bias, don't ever do that again. So when things go bad, we learn quickly, so we tend to default to a negative thought process. It's much easier for us to think that our past was a nightmare, or that the way we're looking at our past is negative versus looking at our past positive. And why is that important? Well, if we look at our past in a negative light, then we're shackled to our past. We actually prevent ourselves from living our best life and manifesting the greatest happiness we can, because we're shackled to a tarnished, nightmarish past. So a little bit about my past that I could look at negatively was, I was raised by a single mom. She had a lot of problems with addiction, alcoholic, and then drug addict. She eventually died of a heroin overdose. My mother had me when she was a teenager, and she died when I was a teenager. So I could look at all that as unfair. She missed out. I'm angry with her. I don't forgive her. I had a rough childhood, but I don't look at it that way, because that's binding. That is manifesting limiting beliefs, which never help to live my best life. So how I frame my mother out is, yes, my mom did have a lot of problems, and my mom, in many or most ways, I would say was a terrible mom. But my mother was very creative. She loved to draw. She loved to paint. She was an awesome chef. She was an awesome hairstylist. She would win competitions. She was just a larger-than-life figure, and she had a very loving heart. And even though she was a bad mom, I knew that my mom was, I was the center of her life. And I don't know how she pulled that off, but she did. So I reframed my mother out in a positive light. And then in my mother's absence, I had a whole support system around me. My mother came from a large family. She had 7 brothers and a sister. And when I was a child, her parents were alive, my grandparents, Pietro and Josephine. I spent a lot of time with them. My uncles all stepped up to the plate and took time taking care of me. My Uncle Phil, warrior, he stayed single for a long time. He took me as his son. He taught me how to swim. He taught me how to fish. He took me on a bunch of trips to Canada. My Uncle Phil is my number one father figure. So I was never missing a father figure. I was never wanting for a father because I had all these men in my life. And in the absence of my mother, because she was really never there for me, I had my grandma and my Aunt Rose, these loving, nurturing women taking care of me. I mean, I had all this love around me. I look at it like I had a team of Navy SEALs around me, protecting me and nurturing me. So my childhood, my growing up, I grew up like a prince. And that's how I frame it out. And because I frame it out that way, I am extremely grateful for my past. I am extremely grateful for my history. And that makes me live in the present without fear. So, for instance, my belief is, and I've manifested this in my own head, that I've had an amazing full life already. I'm 58 years old. Hopefully I'll make it to 59, which is only about 6 weeks, but I don't take it for granted. And if I don't make it to 59, or I get hit by a bus today, or get struck by lightning while I'm here talking to you, I know that I've had a good full life. And in this present moment in time, I have not wasted 1 minute on stressing about something, being hateful about someone, or letting any bad emotions take over my internal systems, right? I call the ability to overcome bad emotions as internal mastery. And that's what we're going to be working on quite a bit on my podcast. So gratitude is kind of the key link that opens up the entire world of how powerful our brains are. When we're grateful, we detoxify our brains. When we fill our brains with gratitude, the bad stuff doesn't have enough room to get manifested. So, like for me, I do 2 things. I'm going to say 3 things. I weave in thoughts of gratitude throughout my day, and that takes practice. I journal about things I'm grateful for. That's the second thing I do. And what was the third? I'll come back around to the third thing. I meditate. So when I'm alone, sometimes I don't do this a lot because I'm very focused on gratitude in my thought process. I will put on a song that brings me back to my past, and I'll sit back and I'll close my eyes and I'll start to pull in memories that I'm really grateful for. And it could be a recurring memory, like, playing outside with my friends in the summertime. Could be going on an annual fishing trip with Uncle Phil, Uncle Joe, and my cousins to Canada. Could be playing board games with my mom late into the night. She loved to play board games, and we played a game called Careers. We played Monopoly. My mother taught me how to play chess and checkers. That would be a recurring fond memory, or it can be a one-time memory, like an accomplishment, throwing that last ball of a 300 game, or hitting a great golf shot. I might bring in a funny memory where it makes me laugh, or a moment where I laughed till I cried. And I just keep pulling in memory after memory after memory while I'm taking deep breaths with my eyes closed. And in a short amount of time, I will often have tears running down my face. And these are tears of joy, because in that moment in time, I am in a complete state of bliss. Life cannot get any better than that. The vehicle to do that is the focus on gratitude. What am I grateful for? And it takes a lot of practice to get really good at that, just like it takes a lot of practice to become negative and to become a pessimist. I study neuroscience a lot, and there's a term in neuroscience called metacognition. Metacognition. And metacognition means I am aware of what I am thinking and feeling. It's kind of like having a version of you outside of you paying attention to you and what you're thinking and feeling. And this is something that also requires practice. For instance, anger is a bad emotion. Now, we need anger for survival. There are certain scenarios where anger will help us survive, but we abuse the emotion of anger. We get enraged in traffic. We get angry at our spouse. We get angry at our children. We get angry about things people say. And when we are angry, we are not in a state of bliss. We are in a state of opposite of bliss, right? In my book, I ask a question. I boil all my thoughts down to one simple question. Is the way I'm thinking about something making me happy or unhappy? If I'm thinking about something in such a way that makes me unhappy or angry, then I need to reframe how I am perceiving this thought so I can turn it into something that makes me feel happy. And I know it sounds crazy, but it's absolutely possible. I mean, look at how I explained to you about my past, right? I changed my past from a potential nightmare story. I could have created that in my head and kept telling that throughout my whole life, and then shackled myself to that blemished, dark past, or I could take the same data set and turn it into a positive. So I want you guys to think about your perception of your past, your whole life history. If there's any snags in there that kind of restrict you, if you were possibly, abused as a child, or you've had some trauma, and we've all had it, that you're holding on to, that bring you angst and anxiety inside when you think about it, try to think of a way to reframe that event. And I'm not talking about forget the event. I'm talking about looking at that event or that trauma from a different perspective, and see if you can reframe it so you can let go of it and it's not a snag or a little sharp barb in your past, okay? One of my dearest friends, Tommy Heights, he had a couple events happen to him when he was a young man where he was subject to some abuse by adults. And for some reason, and he didn't even know why, he was clinging on to it. So we talked through this many times, and he was able to reframe those events in such a way where, number one, he didn't take it personally what those people did. He came to realize that those people were messed up individuals, and that, karma is real. We believe in karma. So when you live your life in such a way where you would abuse a child, you're miserable. You live a miserable life. So he was able to let go of these two events in his life by reframing them into something else, right? Whatever he had to do. The people were living a terrible life. They may have been abused themselves. They don't know what they were doing. And even if they did, karma will get them. And it was not directed at him personally. It was directed at, any child that happened to be in their crosshairs. So that's the power of the reframe. So remember, metacognition is I am aware of what I'm thinking and feeling, right? If what I'm thinking and feeling is making me unhappy, then we have the ability to choose to reframe it into something that doesn't make us unhappy and leans toward making us happy. So this is the power of the mind, and it's going to start with gratitude. Now, there's a lot of success books out there and self-help books that say you have to let go of your past and you have to leave it behind. I don't agree with that. I think it's better to embrace your past and reframe your past into a great story of struggle and victory rather than a nightmarish story. And we all have the ability to do that. And guys, we've all had trauma. Every single human being has had trauma. It's how we deal with that trauma that lends itself to either living a bad life or living a good life. It's all our perspective. We have tremendous power in our minds, and we have the ability to focus our thoughts in whatever direction we want. We can focus our thoughts into the darkness or into the light. That is why my book is called How to Be a Warrior of Light in a Dark World. And guys, I think we're really going to need to do this. We're all going to need to start paying attention to this so we can become the best and strongest versions of ourselves. And check this out. This is like one of the many benefits of filling your mind with gratitude. When your mind detoxifies, it becomes stronger. You're less apt to be caught in a personal storm. And if you can handle the problems in your life better, you become a mental warrior of light. Then when the problems do come, instead of going into the darkness and focusing on the what ifs and the negatives, you shift into problem solving mode. You're like, all right, I got this. I'm a warrior. I am strategically designed for this. I got this. And you'll start to see, you'll start to see clearer, right? Many people in this country and all around the world, they're blind. They're blind to the corruption of the world. They don't see what's going on because their focus is so narrow and so internal, and they are susceptible to having fear overwhelm them, right? The evil forces that control the world, they know how to use fear. They know how to instill fear in people. And remember something, fear is paralyzing. There is nothing good about fear if you cannot control the fear. So if you're overwhelmed by fear, right? In other words, oh my God, if I walk out my door without a mask on, I'm going to die. And if I don't take an experimental drug, I'm going to die. You've been taken over by fear. And you do not see things clearly. But some people, they were not overtaken by fear, and they said, okay, well, let me do some research and let me see what's going on here. So that's the difference. If you were in the first group, you were overcome by fear, period. I don't care who you are. Or maybe there's an exception. Maybe you weren't overcome by fear as much as you believed in the system, right? But if the bad guys who are in control are lying to you and you believe in the system and you're subscribing to the dangers of the things that are outside, you are living in a little bit of fear. So we're going to talk a lot about this as we move through the podcast. We're going to talk a lot about gratitude. So how do we get started with the grateful mindset? And I want to call out a few people here. Sarah Goggins, one of my favorite people. You talk about positive vibing all the time. God bless you. I love you. And Michelle Harrison, one of my dear friends, she has pretty bad health problems, and she's in a lot of pain all the time. She fights through it every day and keeps a positive attitude. These are people that inspire me. Just want to call you guys out. So here's one of the ways we can start to build a grateful mindset. Number one is if we make a commitment to actually write things that we're grateful about. We can do it in a journal. We could start a journal, get a book, title it Gratitude Book, and start to write things down every day. Tell yourself, I'm going to write down one thing, two things, three things, five things, whatever that I'm grateful for every single day, and keep adding to that. And you'll see in a short amount of time, you're going to have so many things that you're grateful for, and you'll become very good at doing that, right? And then, some days you might open the book and go, I don't really have anything to enter in it today. I can't think of anything. Then go back and read what you wrote, the things that you have already written that you're grateful for, and that'll trigger your brain, and you'll be able to come up with other stuff. So one of the things I do when I coach people is, like when I first sit down with them, I'm like, I want you to write down 10 things that you're grateful for. And they do that. And then I said, I want you to write down 10 things in your life that aren't going right, things that bother you, things that bring you anxiety, troubles that you're having, etc. I want you to write 10 things down, or as many as you can. And those two papers, that's what I use as the template to coach them. We expand on the gratitude and we reframe the negative to detoxify the brain. And the thing about my methods of doing things, they start with accountability, and we'll do another podcast on that. But if we take accountability for everything that happens to us, everything we think and feel, then we learn that everything is within our control, and nothing outside has anything to do with what happens inside. So there's a famous saying, I put it in my book. If there is no enemy within, the enemy outside can do us no harm. And that, my friends, is what being a warrior of light is all about. So we're going to start with gratitude. I'm going to bring it up in future podcasts. I want to thank you for joining me today. Thank you, my friend Brett, for the call today, triggering this video. And anybody who enjoys the podcast, please smash the like button and the subscribe button. The more of us that band together, the better off we are going to be able to fight the dark forces. I love you all. Have a great day, and I will catch up with you later.